Hey everybody, this is SWChris. I'm going to tell you about my story. And so this is going to be a little different vlog than usual. It might even be a little bit longer. This is really my second, maybe third attempt at trying this because I've rambled on too long. And so I'm going to try to keep it short, but also still authentic. Now, when I talk about my story, I'm not going to tell you every detail. I am probably going to be a little graphic, a little bit. Not disgustingly so, but if you have little kids in the room, you may not want them to hear. So, just a warning for that. Now, this is not a confession video. I also want to tell you that. I am not doing this for therapy. I'm actually kind of coming at this from the other angle. I want you, the viewer, I want you really, hopefully you will identify with some of the stuff that I've gone through, and hopefully that will help you in some way. Either in the fact that you are not alone, or that, hey, here's somebody who understands, I can talk to them. And I want you to talk to me because part of the reason I'm doing this channel is for people like you who've gone through the same crap that I've gone through. And so hit me up on Twitter, hit me up on YouTube Mail if that's still around, or through any of these social media channels down below. I will talk with anybody about anything, and maybe we'll have frank discussions. Let's kind of go into my story, and it starts when I'm 3 years old. I was led to Christ when I was 3. Now, that's not normal experience, despite what you hear on the internet. Most of the people that I've talked to who are Christians became Christians later in life. I'm kind of the odd duck out. That's mixing metaphors. There I go again. But it's pretty rare. And I had a childlike faith in the sense that I kind of knew the basics, but I didn't really know why it was true. I just trusted my parents that it was true at that age. Now, I have 2 brothers and 2 parents, and we grew up in a small town. And I was a pretty shy kid growing up. I remember in the 2nd grade, I had gotten some kind of evangelistic kick going, and I wanted to do my Christian duty and lead somebody to Christ. But being shy, I was scared. I didn't know what they would think of me. And that kind of meant that what happened was I ended up leading this kid to Christ on the playground in the 2nd grade. I think I said that already. But after that, I said, okay, God, I've done my duty. Now just let me go on about my life, because I don't want to do that anymore. I'm not suited for it. It makes me nervous. I'm scared of what people will say. I don't want to be the weird kid. So just back off. And he kind of did, but I don't know if that was for good or bad, but you know what? Who am I to second guess the Almighty? But the thing is, I was a shy kid. That's the whole point. And my parents had this idea that I was going to be an athlete, that I was going to be a basketball star or something like that. And so they would get us sports sets. I would get a t-ball set, basketballs, baseballs, gloves. We would enroll in the summer t-ball leagues, the winter basketball camps. There was this camp called Little Dribblers. There was one time when I was there, and the coach decided to have a skins versus shirts scrimmage. And I'm 7 or 8 at the time. And so it shouldn't be any big deal, right? Except I was scared to take off my shirt. I was afraid of how I looked. I don't know why I was afraid, but I was, and I wouldn't do it. And the coach wasn't mean about it or anything, but he did try to get me and my friend who was with me and wouldn't take off his shirt for probably the same reasons. He tried to get us to do that, to take off our shirts, and he would tell us that nobody cared what we looked like and that it was fine and that you're going to have a great game. And it was embarrassing to be singled out like that. I don't know why he wouldn't just put us on the shirts team, but he didn't. I guess maybe it was because he tried to make a man out of us or something like that. Yeah, like as if you can do that in 5 minutes. But the result was we sat on the sidelines and we watched, and I was left wondering what the other kids thought of me. What would happen now that they knew that I was different from them, in the sense that I had body image issues, you know. And there's little embarrassments like that that just kind of piled up over the years. And I understand that a lot of people can kind of bounce back from that and have an easier time of bouncing back from that. But I didn't. They just kind of piled up in my psyche and like a clogged pipe, really. That's not to say I didn't have a good childhood. You know, my parents didn't fight that often, and divorce was never really a threat. You know, I understand not everybody is that lucky, but you know, we had NES and we had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and we would role play Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I would put on Nintendo tournaments for my friends. What few I had, I didn't have a whole bunch. My friends consisted of the people I interacted with regularly at church and at school. And the number of friends steadily diminished over time as I got older and moved into junior high. One example, and I've told this elsewhere, is in the 6th grade when we were tasked by our English teacher to write a Shakespearean play and to act it out. And so we came up with a tragedy. And me and one of my friends were going to be beggars on the street. And one of them would speak, which was my friend, and the other one would be deaf and dumb. And that's what they called people who couldn't speak and couldn't hear in Shakespearean days. And so that's what I got called, was the deaf and dumb character. Except I kind of interpreted it to be can't hear, but I'm the comic relief in a tragedy. And then I inadvertently discovered method acting and ended up annoying my friend to no end. And it came to a head, finally, on the way to band class. I was in the hall, and I was acting squirrely around him, and annoyed him just a little bit too far. He shoved me away. He shouted at me. He said some insulting things, and he marched into the band room. And I was left standing there just befuddled at what had happened. What did I do wrong? You know? I was just having fun, and I thought that was the point. You have fun around friends. I didn't know that I was acting wrong. I didn't know that I was annoying him, and yet that reaction suggested that I had done something bad. And that ended our friendship. And, well, for several years, and it turned him into someone who willingly would mock me and belittle me in front of others. And that continued through junior high, and other people piled on. In the 7th grade, we had graduated from the 6th grade building, and we were meant to go to a high school, to the high school building, because we were a small town. They don't have a separate middle school. They actually put the middle school in the high school. And so in 7th grade, we were in this kind of 1950s 3-story brick building, which looked right out of Back to the Future, to be honest. And I remember being on the 3rd floor, all alone after class, putting my books away and grabbing my backpack full of gear and trudging towards the basement. And the reason I was doing that was because my parents had signed me up for football practice, football games and things like that. They were still under the belief that I would get over my aversion to sports and that I would embrace it if only I knew how to play it. And that walk was the loneliest walk I had ever had in my life. It felt like I was walking to my own execution. I was trudging down the stairs all alone, on the verge of tears, really. And I knew I had a choice. I could defy my parents, my coaches, my teachers, everybody I knew, and just walk out the front door and go home. Or I could do my duty, sacrifice myself on the altar of junior high jokes and mockery, and go downstairs and do what was expected of me and go to football practice. And sometimes I still wish this day that I had walked out that door, but I went downstairs instead. And when you're put in that situation, you don't feel you can trust the people who put you in that situation. So that's why I felt really, really alone. They were acting out of my best interests, my parents were, but something happened to cause a disconnect. And I think this may have contributed to it. I don't know, but it's a horrible thing to know that the two people who you count on most when you're at that age and you're going through that kind of crap, the two people who you should be able to count on, you feel like you can't, you know. The locker room just smelled like a medieval torture chamber. It was filled with these half-grown, impish kind of man-children things, squawking and squealing and snapping towels and being jerks. And it was something I endured day after day for 3 years. 3 years before I finally felt like I could just give it up and that I had permission to give it up. And that kind of thing basically caused me, just that daily experience caused me to retreat into myself because I didn't have anybody really to rely on. And the only thing I could do to protect myself was to retreat into myself and duck and cover and not do anything to attract the attention of others. And so I had to be perfect. I had to do things perfectly, and that was the only way to really avoid ridicule, was to be unnoticeable, to blend in, but not vocally, just blend into the background, and then do things perfectly so that my camouflage would not disappear. And so that kind of thing ended up with me kind of shutting myself off from my parents, like I said, and my dad especially. He was there for sports advice, but that was about it. And one day I came into my mom's office after work, after school, and she kind of cornered me and she said she asked me why I didn't talk to my dad. She showed me this article that she had clipped out from the newspaper, and it was about how dads could talk to their teenage sons. And that just, it made me feel more guilty, to be honest. Now, I understand that wasn't her intention and that wasn't her fault. There's no way she could have known because of, what we were all going through. I was afraid of being cut off. And, I was afraid of everybody, really. And so I was isolating myself just to make the pain stop. And so she couldn't talk to me to find out what was wrong and accurately diagnose what was wrong. And so when she tried to help, that just ended up kind of adding one more thing into the plugged up pipe. During this whole time, Jesus was still there. He was in my life. I knew that I believed in him and that he would be with me, but I didn't know really why. I just kind of knew instinctively. And that's important later on down the line, because here's where I'm going to talk about something that's really personal. When I was 14, my parents left me alone in the house for not the first time, but the first time after we had gotten the internet. And so I decided to look up some porn. And what happened was I ended up getting addicted. Sex addiction is not something you talk about. But I feel like I need to talk about it because I think a lot of kids have that, and it's undiagnosed and it's untreated. And I need to let you know that I've dealt with that. I deal with that, and I still do. It's a very touchy subject, but I want you to know that I've been there. What sex addiction does not mean going out and getting prostitutes every night or anything like that. I mean, it can be that bad, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, it just can be, all it really means is that you have a physical need and you're fulfilling it in the wrong way. And you're compelled to fulfill it in that way. And so my addiction ended up being something that I had to hide. One more thing that I had to hide. And so that ended up just being the thing that really just kind of clogged the pipe up once and for all. But I knew because of my relationship with Jesus that there were other traps, like the prostitutes, that I was protected from because I knew instinctively that they were wrong. And he helped me through that. He helped me get through that. Sometimes you have to go through a lot of crap to really blossom, And that's what I think is happening right now with me. So in college, I ended up reading 2 books, and they were John Eldridge's Wild at Heart and another book called Every Young Man's Battle. And they ended up convincing me that I was kind of out of control with my addictions, and that I knew I needed to take the risk to finally talk to my parents. Did I say this was in college? It's in college. And so I did. And it wasn't fun, but it was cathartic. It was a huge pressure just released and gone because my parents acted a lot more lovingly than I thought they might, that I feared they might in my deepest fears. And so they got me into counseling, and I went there through school and then off and on for a couple years until I finally started taking it a little more seriously after college. And what the counseling ended up teaching me was that instead of focusing on, what I do that makes me who I am, that belief, is that even true? Is what I do, does that make me who I am? Is it my addictions that make me who I am? Is it some other thing that is part of me that makes me who I am? But the answer I've learned is no. While those things are part of my past and my experiences, they're not who I am. Who I am is my identity, who God sees me as, And Christianity teaches that God loves us all. We may be in rebellion to him, but he still has a love for us. And he wants to see us as his children. And he wants to see us as like his own son, Jesus, So he wants to adopt us into his family. And I realized that intellectually before I realized that here in my heart. And I'm still kind of realizing it in my heart. And that'll probably be a lifelong process. But that's what the counseling has taught me, and it's helped me to get through some of this crap. Because my addictions are a symptom. They're not the problem. And the crap I went through in high school was a symptom. It wasn't the problem. It wasn't the bullies. They were a symptom of their own insecurities, their own families' insecurities, and the own spiritual issues within those families. And so I realized that fixing me wasn't the focus. It wasn't what I needed to work on. I needed to work on seeing myself as God saw me. Of course, and in the process, taking practical measures to play a defensive game against these addictions that I deal with. And it's very interesting because, when I moved to Washington State, I had this moment of clarity that was amazing. And it's hard to describe because it was really that amazing. But I can give you a word picture. So there's this guy called Ravi Zacharias, and he's a speaker. And he uses this illustration of an Indian father and a son running a kind of a loom. They're weaving a tapestry together. And the father is the one that's doing the weaving, and the son is the one moving the shuttle back and forth. And the shuttle is this thing on the loom that just, I guess, it weaves the cloth together. And the father is the one picking the strands of the cloth and putting them in a pattern. And like our father, God's design is in his head. And like the son, we don't see that design in the tapestry of our life until we look back on it and we see it. And so everything up to that point I saw with crystal clarity, and I saw the pattern. And it was amazing, really. My design is chaos and it's hope. It's rich reds and blues of addiction, woven together with the lush hues of the greens and yellows of hope and holiness. And I can really only describe it in colors, because to describe it in terms of events would take far longer than this video. But that's when I realized that there is something to this God thing. And it's not to diminish the intellectual aspect, because my faith, this is an intellectual faith. There are intellectual reasons for things like the resurrection. There are things that you can look at, evidences you can see. And they're not pseudoscience crap. It's textual evidence. It is philosophical reasoning. It is hard sciences. It's all there. But for me, that was the biggest evidence that God was in my life, that he cared about me, and that he was weaving that tapestry. And I really think he showed a glimpse of it to say, trust me. So back to the clogged pipes, that analogy. It's a pretty accurate one, because I've been in counseling for several years now, for not just the addictions, but the social anxiety and several other things. And a lot of it goes back to those fears that developed when I was young. Fears centered around what everybody thinks about me. This May, I ended up traveling to Colorado Springs to do something called EMDR therapy. And that's basically just a fancy method of clearing those pipes out. And it helped a whole lot. It basically is sort of like free association, but it's guided by the counselor. And it helps your mind process signals that are sent to your amygdala whenever you think of those embarrassing moments, like going to football practice from the third floor in high school and trudging through that horrible hallway. Your fight or flight response activates, and it's in your amygdala, which is kind of right here in the center of your brain. And it's sort of your reptilian brain is what they call it. And the signal can't get up to your frontal cortex where memories are stored. Because your fight or flight response kind of fights it and gets in the way. I don't know if I'm doing justice to the explanation, but that's sort of how it was explained to me. And what EMDR does is it alternates audio signals, and that kind of helps you It's just like it's a tone and it alternates from left to right, and you're listening to it and you're free associating during that, and it kind of helps you get those memories from through the amygdala and back into your frontal cortex to where you can process them properly, and the pipes kind of unclog, basically, is what it is. And what I experienced during that, some of it was interesting, but I realized that I have this little 10-year-old kid inside of me, and he manifested himself as kind of this scary mask, and I couldn't destroy the mask no matter how hard I tried, because he's me. You know, I can't kill me. But he's this dude that's in there that's dealing with all this crap as if he was reliving it, and I had to basically, and this is all symbolic, but I basically had to befriend him, get him to trust me, and just to say, you know, I can handle this. I can do this. You can trust me to navigate through these social situations, because I have tools that we didn't when I was that young. I, have defenses that I didn't, that are healthy, and I can get us through this kind of these social issues where things might get awkward, or I might say something that other people might find offensive and I have to backtrack or something like that. You know, I can deal with those now. And so that's what that process taught me. It also taught me a lot about myself and my own self-image, in that when I went back to the hallway in 7th grade where I was trudging down to football practice, and I saw another person there, and he was a bit taller, he was skinnier, he was athletic, he had long straight hair, he didn't have glasses, he was confident, and he was throwing a football around, he was dressed in blue jeans and a leather jacket, and he was the me that I wanted to be. And he was somebody I ignored at first. But then I went up and I asked him, "Why are you here?" And it's really something. I don't think my dad doesn't know this, but he's going to find out when he watches this. My dad came into the sort of the free association, and he puts his hand on both our shoulders. He says, "You two, he's talking to popular me, or he's talking to me, actually. He says, "You and he," and he addresses popular me. He says, "You and he are one." And that was a revelation, because my personal conception of myself had been as really this skinny person who is nerdy and geeky and just, book smart, but funny, but still inferior to other people in a sense. And here's my dad telling me that this popular kid, it's actually me. We're the same person, and that I have those traits, and that I am worthwhile. And that has been something that I've been processing over the last month, and it's true in a way. No, it's not. It's not true in a way. It's true, and it's something I'm working on and processing and assimilating into myself, and I'm getting through this stuff. Finally, after all these years, I'm starting to move past it. Telling this type of story 6 months ago, I probably couldn't even fight my way through the tears. And I've been relatively calm through most of it, and I'm even putting it on the internet to help other people. How crazy is that? And so we come to the present day, and I'm in the SMB live stream the other night, and the topic was what others think about us. And we had some very heart-to-heart discussions. And the thing that impressed upon me the most was the fact that there were so many kids going through what I went through. And they felt like they couldn't talk to their parents. And they felt like they were all alone. And they felt like the only place that they could turn to was that moment, that deep end discussion. And if this helps address that need for those wounded hearts, if this helps you understand what life can be like on the other side, then I pray it does, because there's so much to life, and there's more than you can know at this stage than some silly advertisement campaign telling you it's gonna be better, you know, some slacktivism Facebook meme that goes around. You know, there's real stories like mine out there. There's a generation that's my age that's come up that sees you guys down there that are coming up, and we want to tell you that we've been there, that we understand what it's like, and that we won't judge you, and that you can talk to us. So I hope you do. There's a because I'm making myself available. All right. So if you want to contact me and tell me your story, if you identified with anything in this, tell me. It doesn't have to be in the comments, which are public. I will moderate them so that they're safe. But if you feel like you want to talk in private, then that's a safe place too. And you can reach me on Twitter, or through YouTube mail, or through any of the social media services that are in the description below. So that's going to be it for me, and that's a really long blog post, but I hope it helps in some way. So that's my story, and I'm not going to finish that line. So, goodbye.